Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Time to Fear by Michael Anderle. Narrated by David Stifel. Chapter 1. I am coming. Ivy stared at the wall. The words there flowed like blood and leapt like flames, and their glow illuminated the room. She pushed to her feet and left John on the couch. It took an act of will for her to convince her shaky legs to carry her to the scrawled message. Tentatively, she pressed her palm against the surface and smeared it down and across the words. To her surprise, they weren't wet, and they did not change. When she removed her hand, they remained as clear and bright as before. "This wasn't here earlier," she murmured, and the compound's AI replied. "No," Roma told her. "I have footage." Before either of the young people could indicate that they were interested, the screen on the far wall came to life, and they saw themselves on the couch. At first it looked as though they were sleeping. Then he murmured in his sleep. She stirred and raised her head to look into his face, but immediately drew back in astonishment when his skin began to glow. Off-screen, John's eyes widened as he watched the light that emanated from his body intensify. The other self on the screen didn't move, even though the on-screen Ivy shuffled hastily back. She stared at him for a moment before she prodded him cautiously in the shoulder. "John?" Her voice echoed around them, but his on-screen persona didn't move. Her recorded self prodded him again, harder this time. "John!" Panic laced her voice in the playback. Her companion, the real self, now fully awake, heard it, approached her quickly and took her hand. He said nothing, just squeezed gently and let her lean into him. His recorded self didn't move, but something caught on-screen Ivy's attention, and she turned to stare at the wall opposite her. The camera switched to reveal the letters appearing on the wall. It was as though they were being inscribed in blood and fire, or pure fury incarnate. In the background, she shouted his name on the playback. Roma cut the feed. "You both know the rest," she informed them. Ivy tapped the wall. This... She stopped to gather her thoughts. "It's freaky. It's like this Stephanie person is some kind of poltergeist." John snickered. "She cannot be a poltergeist," Roma informed them. "If she was a poltergeist, she would be dead. And you say that is not the case." "It's true," John told the AI. "She is not dead. But it's still weird to be contacted by a mythical figure." He stopped and recalled the contact in his mind. Ivy nudged him. "So? What was she like?" "She was... Well, I didn't get to see her. I only heard her voice." She frowned. "So, what did you see?" "I woke up, or thought I did, in a field of purple grass. I didn't know where I was, but this voice..." "Voice?" she interrupted. John nodded. "A woman's voice. She told me it was Meligorn." "Stephanie's other home," Remy stated, and he glanced at the intercom before he continued. "I noticed 2 moons in the sky, and mountains bigger than what we have at home." He paused. "And she thought I was Becky's son." "Why?" "I don't know. I didn't ask. I told her..." He cut off to fight the almost overwhelming surge of sadness that swept over him. After he'd cleared his throat, he continued. "I explained about Becky and what she believed and why she died." He fell silent again, and Ivy shifted restlessly. What else, John? It took a few long moments before he responded. She asked me who Stephanie Morgana was, but it wasn't like she didn't know. It was more like she wanted to find out who I thought she was, so I told her. The boy stopped to recall the conversation that had followed. Ivy lost patience and nudged him with her elbow. And? John startled. He shook his head to regain his focus. She wanted to know if I was worried that her return might cause millions of deaths. She snorted. It's a little late. The regime has already murdered that many, and maybe more. His smile was grim and mirthless. That's what I told her. I also said that the blood of patriots feeds the tree of freedom. And what did she say to that? She apologized, he began, but she interrupted him. What did she think she had to apologize for? It's not like she could have known what they would be like. That's exactly what she apologized for, John told her. For not saying this outcome. Then she said she wouldn't rest until the regime was dead and buried under her feet. Yes, she hissed approval. So she is coming back. And, Remy prompted. John flicked a glance toward the ceiling. And she called me her apostle and said she was the witch of the Federation. And that she was coming. Ivy stared at him, curious again. What happened next? He frowned. You woke me and said I was glowing. The girl gestured sharply at the darkened screen. Well, you were. You saw the footage. It's not like you can deny it. No, it's not. He smiled sheepishly at her. Did she say when she would return? Roma asked. Yes, Remy agreed quickly, his tone eager. A date would be useful. John shook his head ruefully. No, but I got the impression that it would be sooner rather than later. Roma said. In that case you need to prepare, and to do that you will need to rest. Follow the lighting to return to your room. He nodded and moved to the door, but when Ivy went to follow him, Roma stopped her. Ivy, you need to spend some time in the pod dock. She stopped and frowned at the nearest camera. Pod dock? Her companion paused and tilted his head in thought. Is that the same as the medical pod? He asked. Affirmative, Roma replied. It is the same as your medical pod. Ivy glared at John and put a hand on her hip. So it does what exactly? It helps you heal faster, he told her. How does it do that? She asked. He shrugged. I don't know, but I was fairly badly injured when I went into the one Remy had, and I was almost as good as new when I came out. Yes, she insisted, but how does it work? His blank expression confirmed that he had no idea, but Remy came to his rescue. It works by using rejuvenation techniques to cause damaged cellular material to repair and multiply as needed. It what? It rejuvenates, Roma added, and uses medical functions to diagnose injury and enable the body to take the necessary steps to remediate it. Both young people stilled. It's a rejuvenation pod? Ivy asked finally. Yes, Remy answered. It combines rejuvenation technology with healing technology to blend both capacities in one machine, Roma confirmed. But I don't feel sick, the girl told her, and I'm not hurt. I still need you to spend the night in the pod dock, Roma insisted. It is the only way I can take the readings I will require when you are injured. Frankly, I would rather have those readings now than try to take them when I need to save your life. And you think I'll be hurt? John is about to start a war and you are with him. calculations suggest that is a high possibility." Ivy sighed. "I see your point. The pod is this way," Roma said. "If you would please follow the green lighting." John placed a hand on her arm. "I'll go with you," he said reassuringly. She nodded, and they both followed the green lighting to where the pod dock waited. "You will need to wear the medical gown to your right," the AI instructed, and she blushed. "Out!" she commanded, and pushed her friend to the door. "You can come back when I've changed." He complied, and made no protest when the door to the pod dock's room slid closed behind him. Still exceptionally weary, he leaned against the wall opposite, flicked a cautious glance up and down the corridor, and returned to Ivy only when the door slid open again. She was seated in the pod and looked up as he entered. "I'm not so sure about this, John." His smile was intended to be reassuring. "You'll be fine." Immediately she scowled at him, but before she could say anything, he raised his eyebrows in a challenge. "Why, Ives? You're not scared, are you?" Her scowl deepened as she laid her head against the headrest. Much like he had done, she gasped when the helmet lowered over her head. She stiffened, and he guessed she could feel the leads moving across her scalp as the sensors attached themselves. Her gaze flicked to where he stood. "If this hurts, Mr. I'm the heretic's apostle Dunn, I will make you very sorry." John gave her his sincerest look. "If it hurts you, Ives, you won't need to." Before she could reply, the pod's lid lowered. "John?" Her voice quavered, and her body jerked as though she'd tried to raise her hand. "Hey! Son of a—" It snapped shut with a decisive click. "The sedative is starting to work," Roma informed him, and he chewed his bottom lip and focused on the erratic movement of the lines on the display that recorded her vitals. "Is she all right?" "She is fine, John," she assured him as the lines settled. "She is merely not adjusting quickly to the pod. That will change by the time she emerges." "Uh-huh," he commented, his eyes dark with concern. When no sounds came from the pod and the lid did not reopen, he sighed. "Well, tonight we'll be quiet," he muttered. The strip of yellow light came to life, and he did not hear the snicker the AI kept well inside its circuits. "What are you laughing at?" Remy asked. "Because that young man is sorely mistaken," Roma informed him primly. "It will not be a quiet night. Tonight I intend to test him." "Test him?" Remy asked doubtfully, and let her see the likelihood of an unsavory outcome. "I wish to see if he has remembered his training," Roma informed her fellow AI. "I would prefer to assess his level of skill for myself." "I can provide you with the necessary data," he replied. "I can assure you there is no need to test his skill in this fashion." "I have seen your records," she responded. "Now I wish to gather the relevant data for myself." "I can assure you this is not necessary," Remy began, only to have Roma brush his protest aside. "And I can assure you that you will have nothing to fear, as I don't believe your most excellent data will be proven wrong. I merely wish to see this apostle in a situation that has not yet been covered, so I can assess what gaps I might need to cover." "I strongly suggest that you do not do this in a live environment," he stated. "May I suggest you move his testing to a pod?" "You may suggest what you like," she retorted, "but I wish to see how he responds when he does not know he is in a test situation." "You mean you want him to think the situation is real?" "Correct." "May I No," she replied firmly. "You may not." Remy subsided and stifled a snicker of his own. This would certainly be interesting. David Thomason curled his fingers into a fist and snapped the pencil between them. Discarding the two pieces, he lowered his hand and bowed his head. "I will kill them all," he murmured, and gradually pulled his temper back under control. He raised his head and looked at where the coffee machine was brewing. With a slight frown, he raised his now pencil-less hand in a brief motion to levitate a nearby cup and float it into the machine to fill it. The rich aroma of coffee filled his nostrils, and he sighed. It was astonishing how the mere smell of some things reduced stress. He moved the cup onto the bench, added cream and sugar, and floated it to his desk. When it was within reach, he took hold of it and wrapped his hands around the warm ceramic. As he raised it to his lips, he closed his eyes and took the first sip. Ava's picture and profile were blocked momentarily from sight. Once he'd savored his second sip, he opened his eyes again. With a small motion, he instructed the cup to remain afloat while he placed his hand on the mouse and closed the file. The document open beneath it held a list of names and tasks. The CIO ticked the box beside the woman's name and moved to the next task on the list. It didn't take him long to decide his personal assistant was the best person to create a short list. The next item made his lips thin with satisfaction. The naval plans would hopefully bring better results. He drummed his fingers on the desk before he took his cup absently by the handle and called the man he needed to speak to. "Deveray!" he snapped, and his mouth stretched in a tight smile when the man jumped. His fleet admiral had been asleep, he decided, although he seemed to have snapped out of it now. "Sir," the man responded sharply, then softened his tone. "How can I help you?" "I need to see you." Deveray's eyes widened. "No. Would I call you otherwise?" "No, sir. Yes, sir." Deveray sighed and tried again. "Do you know what time it is?" David made a show of glancing to one side. When he looked back, there was no concession in his tone. "Yes, Alistair. I am aware that it is 2 a.m, but we have plans to discuss." The man's face went carefully blank, and his tone was neutral when he replied, "I'll be right over." The CIO lifted his cup in a brief salute. "I'll see you when you get here." The fleet admiral didn't keep him waiting and knocked at his door less than a half hour later. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Thomason gestured at the coffee pot and began to talk while his visitor filled a cup. "About this outpost," he began, and the admiral stiffened. "Sir?" "I hear there are still some humans there." Deveray's gaze was wary as he crossed to stand before the desk. "That's the rumor, sir." He responded with a blank stare when the CIO jerked his head up to stare at him. "Well, either there are or there aren't, Admiral." After a moment in which he accepted that his boss had no intention to let the matter slide, he sighed. "Initial intelligence reports show there are perhaps a half-dozen humans living at the outpost, sir. I'm waiting for an update as to their loyalties." "Their loyalties don't matter." David tapped his keyboard and rose from his seat. The fleet admiral took 2 hasty steps back and turned with him to gaze at the maps now displayed on the screen. "These are from the initial survey team, are they not?" Thomason asked. His companion took a moment to study them before he replied. "They are," he confirmed when he was sure. The CIO picked up a ruler and tapped 2 areas on the screen. "These are where the living areas are located?" Again the man nodded. "They are." David tapped the screen again, and the ruler rattled against 2 points, one very close to one of the living areas. "And these are your entry points," he pressed. Deveray lowered his chin and answered cautiously. "Yes, sir." "So, your entry team at this point is likely to encounter opposition," he stated matter-of-factly. The Admiral frowned. "Not," he began, but he was cut off before he could finish. "That close to their living quarters? The team is bound to be identified, and you need to have no witnesses. There will be opposition." Understanding flashed over the Admiral's face. Without giving the man time to respond, he continued, "Make sure your teams understand. There were no human survivors from this raid." Given that the raid hadn't happened yet, his meaning was clear. The man's expression turned deadpan, and he nodded. "Yes, sir," he acknowledged, and added, "Will there be anything else?" Thomason took a remote out of his pocket and pointed it at his computer. He kept his attention on the screen as the images changed. This time they showed a star map and the position of the main fleet monitoring Dreth. "Are they ready?" he demanded, and Deveray gave him a startled glance. "Yes, sir," he confirmed. "They've run the simulation every 2 days for the last month. Everyone knows their roles and the assigned target." "And the news will have time to get out?" The man nodded. "The footage you need will be packaged and talked to Notaro in time for your people to process it and get it out." "And the diplomatic side?" David allowed himself a predatory smile. "We'll tell the Dreth their inability to protect a single outpost leaves us gravely concerned about the safety of their people, and we feel we have a moral obligation to ensure their safety." Deveray raised his eyebrows. "And if they don't believe you, sir?" The CIO shrugged. "It doesn't matter what they believe. We'll slaughter their outpost and use it as the excuse we need to take their world. Whether they believe me or not is irrelevant." "You know they'll fight," the Admiral stated, and his boss's smile widened. "I'm counting on it," he said forcefully. "And when we've ground them under our heel, we'll tell them we intended a friendly occupation to keep them safe, and remind them that they turned it deadly." "And Meligorn?" "We'll take Dreth so fast the damned elves won't have time to respond. Once the Dreth fire the first shot, your units will roll up their main navy positions and destroy their fleet." He paused to give Deveray a sharp look. "Your units are in position, aren't they, Admiral?" The man's eyes widened, and he hastened to reassure him. "Of course they are, sir. They have no idea about the second fleet moving into the system, and we have a third ready to transition once the battle is started." David studied his face and saw no attempt at deception. The Admiral continued, "The initial action will give our raiders time to rejoin the main force with minimal risk of detection, and several of our pirate units are ready to join their fleets using the battle as cover." "Any observers?" the CIO snapped with momentary concern. Deveray shook his head. "None that we've detected since we blew the last one up." "And the Meligornians?" "They're out of position to help, and if all goes to plan, they'll stay that way. By the time they realize Dreth might have needed their assistance, there won't be a Dreth to assist, although there will be another Earth colony in this sector." "And the Dreth?" The man's lips tightened. "They can either stay on their world and mine it for us, or they can leave on the transports we provide." "Oh?" "As discussed, sir. Those ships will initially head to Telor, but none of them will reach it." "And if Meligorn seeks to intervene?" "We have already planned to have a surge of refugee ships. The Meligornians will be too busy rescuing people from ships too unfit to fly to be of any assistance to Dreth." When David studied him thoughtfully, the Admiral suppressed a shudder. That particular look on his CIO's face meant trouble, usually for whoever was under discussion, but sometimes, as Ava had discovered, for the person he was looking at. "Do we have a plan B?" he asked, and Deveray suppressed the urge to breathe a sigh of relief. "Yes, sir, we do. I have several small flotillas standing by to transition for simultaneous pirate attacks along the edge of the system and on some of their more remote colonies and outposts." Thomason nodded sharply. "Good. We don't want those damned elves to help yet." He moved to his seat and dropped into it. The fleet admiral waited in silence while the CIO made a show of bringing up more files and studying them. It was a relief when he finally spoke. "And we have enough ships?" he asked. "Yes, sir. We'll still have most of Edward's main fleet in system." "Most?" The man jerked his head up to look at his companion. "Will it be enough?" "With Dreth's navy defeated, and the Melagornians tied up rescuing refugees and fending off pirate attacks, it will be more than enough, sir." The CIO studied him for a moment longer, then nodded and shifted his attention to his screen. Deveray waited until his boss was focused on that before he slowly released the breath he'd been holding. His boss's next words made him jump. "Resources!" he snapped, and the Admiral came to attention. "The outpost will provide much of the shortfall," he began, but the CIO waved him to silence. "We will run out long before that." The other man's eyes widened, and he frowned as he tried to remember some of what they'd covered in previous meetings. David usually knew what was where, right down to the last pound. That he didn't was not a good sign. "What about the Australian mines?" he asked, and knew he'd located the problem the second he'd finished. "Ava's little scare campaign didn't work," Thomason all but snarled, and he smacked the flat of his hand on the desk. Deveray startled. "Sir?" "It's nothing I can put my finger on, but there have been delays, accidents, cave-ins in stable shafts. Their production is dropping, although they look like they're doing their best. But—" he shrugged. "Do you think it's sabotage, sir?" "Instinct says something's not right, but there's nothing concrete I can deal with." "Trust Ava to stir up a hornet's nest and leave me to deal with it," Deveray thought, but kept it to himself. "I can send a work order through for more production from the lunar mines." "Already done," the CIO told him, and his gaze grew distant as he looked at the Admiral. "What I need is a new source, and talents with telekinetic abilities. Many talents with telekinetic abilities." "But," the Admiral began, but his boss gave him a look that dried up the voice in his throat. "You'll get them back in time for your war," Thomason stated coldly. "But I need 100 telekinetics mining a new source as soon as we have one, and I need the minerals now." "I'll see what intelligence can find me regarding alien shipments," Deveray stated, and David pinned him with an angry stare. "I said I needed a source." It took effort, but the fleet admiral swallowed and kept his face blank. He cleared his throat. "We'll take the cargo and use the ship's logs to locate the source," he assured the CIO, who seemed to relax. "Say that you do. I expect a report on my desk at 1800. Deveray thought about trying to explain the logistics of intelligence, and quickly decided against it. He'd seen that look on the man's face before. "Will there be anything else, sir?" Thomason leaned back in his chair and laced his fingers behind his head. "Yes, about this interdiction." Chapter 2. Two lone figures on a country road didn't stir much comment, not even given that one wore a cowboy hat. For one thing, there was no one to see them.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?